This video is to give you some information about A-level PE, including the structure of the course, what topics you will study, how you'll be assessed, and to try to answer some of the common questions that students usually have. If you're deciding whether to take A-level PE, then you should think about whether you enjoy these types of things. You'll need to use lots of current sporting examples in your work and in the exam, so you should be interested in a range of sports and be keen to read sports news apps and watch sport on TV to keep up with the latest issues in sport. You will need to use examples from common sports such as football, rugby and athletics, as well as international events such as the Olympics, and you'll also study sports in America. Debating issues is also a key skill to enable you to write good exam answers, so you should enjoy sharing your views on topics such as should drugs be legalised in sport and is hosting the Olympics good for a country. A-level PE brings together a range of subjects, so you should enjoy or be interested in science, especially biology, as well as psychology. It's also important that you enjoy playing sport and that you're regularly playing and training at a club outside of school in your main sport. So here's an overview of the course structure, and at Waldegrave we follow the Edexcel A-level syllabus. The course is made up of 4 components. This shows a summary of each component, and we will look at the content for each component in more detail later in the video. Component 1 is a science-based component, and it's worth the biggest part of the course at 40%. In Component 2, you will study sports psychology, as well as contemporary issues in sport and society, and this is worth 30%. These 2 components are assessed through written assessments. Component 3 is your practical assessment in your chosen sport. Most students are assessed as a performer, but it is possible to be assessed as a coach if this is the role that you do more regularly rather than playing, and it counts for 15% of the course. Component 4 is a written piece of coursework based on your chosen sport, and it also counts for 15% of the course. So, how will each of the 4 components be assessed? Component 1 and Component 2 are assessed through written exams at the end of Year 13. You'll take 2 exams. Component 1 is a scientific paper, and it lasts for 2.5 hours and is worth 140 marks. And in the second exam paper, which is for Component 2, so the Psychology and Contemporary Issues paper, that lasts for 2 hours and is worth 100 marks. For Component 3, the assessment of your practical sport, you'll be continually assessed throughout the 2 years. It will be your responsibility to arrange to be filmed playing competitions, matches or races, as well as recording training sessions and submitting these for the given deadlines, approximately 3 or 4 times a year. Your final practical mark is awarded at around Easter time of Year 13. For Component 4, which is the coursework, this is submitted in written format and is marked by your class teacher. Your marks for both the practical and coursework are then sent off to the exam board to be moderated. So, what sorts of things will you study? Some of the topics will look familiar to you as they build on what you've learned at GCSE, such as Component 1, where you'll learn more about the skeletal system and the muscles, as well as studying new topics, such as how the nervous system responds to exercise to cause muscle movements, or how energy systems allow you to run a marathon. Again, in Topic 2, there'll be some familiar topics, such as methods of training and fitness testing, but you learn about new methods, such as altitude training, as well as more specific fitness tests. There are about 16 different ones for you to know. You will also look at things like diet and sports supplements, as well as rehabilitation and treatment for injuries. Biomechanics is also a big topic for this section, so you'll be looking at the science behind how a gymnast performs a somersault, or why a Formula 1 car stays on the track, how a discus flies through the air, and how technology is impacting sports performance. In the topics you study for Paper 2, you will look at things like different styles coaches can use with their performers, how performers learn new skills, how your memory works to allow you to perform better in sport, how anxiety can affect your performance, and how performers can be motivated. For this paper, you also look at the development of sport from the Industrial Revolution back in the 1800s up to the current day, and things like the large amounts of money that are now involved in sport through sponsorship and commercialisation, and how did sport spread around the world. Other topics include things like cheating and gamesmanship in sport and how talent ID programs work. This is the bit of the course where you'll need your up-to-date knowledge of examples and issues that are happening in current day sport. Just think now of how coronavirus has had such a big impact on sport. For example, postponing the Olympics and Euro 2020, cancelling big events such as Wimbledon and delaying the end of the football season. How might this have affected the athletes, affected the supporters and the clubs and the events themselves, as they will have lost a lot of money? Component 3 is the practical bit, and you only have to be assessed in one sport. You can be assessed as a performer or a coach, but most people participate in their sport as a performer. You must belong to a club outside of school, as you cannot be assessed to a high enough level within school due to the wide range of sports that students offer at A-level. If you do not attend a club outside of school, it will be very difficult for you to complete this part of the course. You should be aware that you'll have to provide video evidence of you competing in your chosen sport. You will not be able to be assessed in school like you perhaps were for GCSE. You must be regularly competing in your sport, taking part in matches, races or competitions, as you have to be assessed in a full-sided or fully competitive version of your sport. Component 4 is the coursework section. This is a written piece of work of 3,500 words and is based on the sport that you're doing for your practical activity. You'll need to look at what components of fitness are important for your sport, carry out some fitness tests to identify what you need to improve before planning and carrying out a training program to try to improve, which you'll then evaluate. It's similar to the PEP for Edexcel GCSE PE, only in a lot more detail. You can see that in the exam you'll be required to answer a range of questions from short answer 2 to 4 mark questions requiring things like definitions and facts up to 15 mark longer essay style questions. There are 6 of these essay style questions in your final exams. And on these next couple of slides they give you some idea of the level of detail that's required for the coursework. So in the first part you're identifying the important components of fitness. And the second part, you're analysing one of the skills for your sport. The third part of the coursework requires you to plan a training programme. And the final part is evaluating the success of that training programme. These are some of the things that you might expect to do in A-level PE lessons, such as have debates and discussions about things like, should performance-enhancing drugs be legally allowed in sport? Is it a good thing to have so many foreign players playing in the Premier League? Do women have equal opportunities in sport? What are the advantages and disadvantages of sponsorship in sport? So sharing your thoughts on those things. As well as having more scientific lessons where you will do things such as labelling diagrams, understanding processes of how muscles contract, there'll be lots of learning of scientific names and being able to explain them. You'll have 3 teachers in Year 12, specialising in one of the areas, each one in an area. 1 teacher for anatomy and physiology, 1 teacher for sports psychology, and 1 teacher for contemporary issues in sport. And finally, I'll just finish with some of the most common questions that students usually ask about A-level PE. Will I have to do the bleep test or the Cooper run? The answer to this is probably yes. There are around 16 fitness tests that you need to learn and you will do them all practically to help you learn about them. You'll also need to do some fitness tests to help you to plan your coursework. Do I need to be good at science? Not necessarily, as we'll teach you everything you need to know, but you do need an interest in biology and be prepared to learn scientific concepts, as anatomy and physiology part of the course is worth 40%, which is the biggest part of the course. Do I have to have done GCSE PE? It's not necessary, it's not essential, as long as you're prepared to do a bit of extra reading and that you're doing a sport at a club outside of school. That's the most important thing. What can I do after A-level PE? There are many sport-related courses at university, as well as careers related to medicine, training as a paramedic, physiotherapy, sports rehabilitation, in addition to the more obvious careers such as a sports coach or a PE teacher. How much practical is there in the course? Well, honestly, there is hardly any practical for A-level PE. You will do some fitness testing and some topics may be taught through practical activities, but most lessons are theory lessons in the classroom. Because everyone on the course does different sports and they're training for those outside of school, we don't have practical lessons as part of the course in school. Do I have to get video evidence of my practical sport? Yes, you definitely do. You must start collecting this from the beginning of year 12. Start thinking now about who you could get to film you. You'll have to film matches or races as well as training sessions. You have to get video evidence as it's sent off to the exam board, and we don't have someone that comes into school to assess you like you might have had at GCSE. Which sports can I do as my practical? This is really important, as a few years ago the government changed the list of sports that you could be assessed in for A-level PE. This slide shows the only sports that can be used for assessment in A-level PE. Some common sports such as martial arts are not included, so it's vital that you check this list carefully to make sure you can be assessed in your main sport. I hope that's given you a good introduction to A-level PE, and we look forward to seeing you in September.